At 35, I had grown used to the sting of being invisible in my own family. My earliest memories were of silence, of being left to watch while others were celebrated. My mother died when I was only 5, leaving a hollow space that was quickly filled by my father's new wife, Karen, and her daughter, Shannon. From the moment they stepped into our sprawling Raleigh home, I learned what it meant to be unwanted. Karen's gaze was cold, her affection reserved for her own child, and Shannon followed her lead, smirking whenever I dared to seek a place at the table. By the time I was 7, the pattern was clear. I was the outsider. Karen bought Shannon designer dresses and piano lessons, while I wore faded jeans and listened to silence. At 10 years old, when I asked to join a dinner with my father's business partners, Karen told me flatly, "You're not part of this." Shannon's echo came sharp. "Stay out of it." Abby, my father, lost in his real estate empire, neither noticed nor cared. I retreated into shadows, learning how to disappear inside my own house. But I found a lifeline when I bought a cheap camcorder at 16. I filmed kids like me, the overlooked, the quiet ones no one cheered for. My stepmother mocked me, calling it wasted time. And Shannon laughed, insisting my films would never change a thing. Still, I pressed on, editing late into the night, piecing together stories that mirrored my own longing to be seen. At 18, I left home, funded by scholarships and fueled by defiance. Shannon floated through college on family money and my father's connections, while I scraped by, shaping my pain into art. She got a lavish graduation party. I got a scribbled note from my father with a check. Over the years, my small documentaries earned modest recognition. Nothing glamorous, but enough to remind me I had a voice. My best friend Ellen Reed, a graphic designer, was the one person who never let me doubt myself. Over countless coffees, she reminded me that my films mattered, that I mattered. Still, every slight from my family lingered. The Christmas where Shannon unwrapped a sapphire bracelet while I held a bookstore gift card, or her sweet 16 with a ballroom and glittering gowns, while my graduation slipped by with a text that read only, "Proud of you." Each wound hardened me, but it also built a quiet strength. When the email for my father's 60th birthday party arrived, signed by Karen, it felt less like an invitation and more like a summons. The words were so formal, as if I were some distant cousin rather than blood. My first instinct was to delete it. I could already picture myself sitting alone at a grand event, ignored, while Karen and Shannon shone in the spotlight. "Why bother?" I muttered. Ellen, sprawled on my couch, grabbed the phone before I could hit delete. "You're going," she said firmly. "Not for them. For you. To prove you're not invisible." I resisted at first, but her words took root. I wasn't that shrinking child anymore. I was a woman who had fought for every scrap of recognition I'd earned. If nothing else, I could walk into that glittering hall with my head high. Then Ellen uncovered something that shifted everything. She was sketching at a Raleigh cafe when she overheard Shannon's voice, hushed but smug. "The shares will be mine soon," Shannon whispered into her phone. Ellen recognized the name Kyle, Shannon's slick, smiling friend who was always hovering at family gatherings. Alarmed, Ellen came straight to me, and together we dug into a shared cloud account Shannon had once used. It didn't take long. Among dress fittings and lunch plans, we found a chilling thread of messages between Shannon and Kyle. "Make sure the papers are ready," Shannon had typed. "Dad won't suspect a thing." Kyle's response was blunt. "Karen's got the lawyer lined up." I stared at the screen, anger tightening my chest. They were plotting to trick my father into transferring his company shares to Shannon, orchestrated by Karen herself. Ellen leaned over my shoulder and whispered, They're playing dirty. We dug deeper and uncovered a draft agreement. Karen's signature scrawled at the bottom, handing my father's legacy to Shannon. Later, Ellen followed Shannon to a bar and managed to record an audio clip. Shannon's voice was unmistakable. Once Dad signs, it's ours. He trusts Karen too much. Kyle's laugh followed. He's got no idea. That night, Ellen and I sat in my apartment, the evidence glowing on my laptop screen. Betrayal wasn't new to me, but this was different. This wasn't about being left out of dinners or gifts. This was about stealing everything my father had built. I saved the files to a small USB drive, my hands trembling. Karen and Shannon thought they could bury me under years of silence, but now I had something stronger than their contempt. I had proof. The night of the party. I walked into Raleigh Hall in a simple black dress, nothing like the sequined gowns that shimmered under the chandeliers. The room sparkled with wealth and chatter, business partners clinking glasses, the air thick with the scent of prestige. A young waiter led me to a corner table near the emergency exit, its tablecloth stained, a single plate with a dry piece of bread waiting for me. It was no accident. Karen's smirk from across the room confirmed it. She floated over, silk dress rustling, and leaned close. "That's all you deserve," she whispered. Shannon followed with a glittering gown and sharper words. Always invisible. Always pathetic. Their cruelty should have crushed me. Instead, I smiled, holding their gaze. They didn't know what was in my pocket. They didn't know that tonight, invisibility would end. I sat in that corner with the dry bread untouched, the laughter and music pressing in like a wall. Waiters passed with trays of champagne but never paused at my table. I wasn't here to sip or mingle. My hand rested on the USB in my pocket. My anchor. Karen and Shannon thought they'd buried me under humiliation, but I had something more powerful than their disdain the truth. When my father finally appeared, moving through the crowd with handshakes and polite smiles, I rose slightly, hoping for even a flicker of recognition, but Karen intercepted him, her hand gripping his arm, steering him toward a cluster of investors. His eyes never reached me. The familiar ache gnawed, but I forced it down. Tonight wasn't about earning his affection. Tonight was about exposing what he could not see. As the evening wore on, the master of ceremonies called for speeches. Karen glided to the stage, her words honeyed as she praised loyalty, family, and legacy. The audience nodded, murmuring approval. The irony lost on them. My pulse thudded louder with every syllable. When she finished to polite applause, I knew it was my moment. I stood, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I have something to share." The words sliced through the hum of conversation. Heads turned. Some faces showed irritation, others curiosity. Karen's smile faltered. Shannon stiffened in her chair, eyes narrowing. I walked forward, the USB warm in my palm, and handed it to the young AV technician I'd quietly recruited earlier. He glanced at me nervously, then slid it into the computer. The screen behind the stage flickered to life. First came a blown-up screenshot of Shannon's text to Kyle. "Make sure the papers are ready. Dad won't suspect a thing." A ripple of gasps spread across the hall. Another message followed, this time from Karen. "The lawyer is set." Then the audio clip played. Shannon's voice rang out clear and smug. "Once Dad signs, it's ours. He trusts Karen too much." Kyle's laugh cracked through the speakers. "He's got no idea." The room froze. Whispers died mid-breath. Faces turned, wide-eyed, toward the stage. My father's brow furrowed, his confusion hardening into something darker. "Turn it off!" Karen shrieked. Her voice shrill, But the technician looked at me. I shook my head. The recording continued, followed by the draft agreement. Karen's signature bold and undeniable, transferring my father's shares to Shannon. The hall erupted. Murmurs grew into shouts, disbelief buzzing like electricity. Karen stumbled to her feet, her mask cracking. "This is out of context," she snapped. But the crowd wasn't convinced. From the back, Kyle appeared, flustered and pale. "It's true," he blurted, panic breaking his composure. "Karen and Shannon planned it all. I just followed orders." Gasps rippled again, sharper this time. Shannon's face drained of color, her charm shattered. Karen's voice pitched high, desperate. "Gregory, it's not what it looks like." But my father's voice cut her off, low and heavy. "Explain this." His hand pointed at the screen, his eyes unyielding. Shannon stammered, "Dad." It was just a misunderstanding, but the crack in her voice betrayed her. The whispers around the room turned into pointed condemnation. Guests muttered words like disgrace and betrayal. A woman in velvet shook her head. A man in a tuxedo muttered, "Unbelievable." Their judgment was a verdict before my father even spoke. Then a tall man stood from the main table, his voice carrying authority. "Matthew Stone, senior partner of Stone and Associates," announced firmly. "Gregory, we've trusted your family for years, but this," he gestured at the screen, "is unacceptable. The merger is off." The words fell like a hammer. Gasps broke again. Karen lunged forward, her poise gone. "Please, Matthew, it was just a draft." But no one listened. Stone and his team gathered their coats and left. Footsteps sharp against the marble floor. Other guests followed. Whispers sharp. Wine glasses abandoned mid-sip. The party dissolved into fragments, the grandeur collapsing under the weight of truth. My father stood rigid, his shoulders heavy, his face carved with shock. He looked at Karen, then Shannon, his voice breaking with quiet fury. "You did this behind my back." Karen reached for his arm, pleading, but he pulled away. Without another word, he walked out, his silhouette fading through the double doors. Shannon turned on me, her eyes blazing with venom. "You ruined everything," she spat. I met her glare, calm and steady. "You did that yourself." My words landed like stone, silencing her. Karen stood frozen, her elegance stripped, her voice trembling as she muttered, "You'll regret this." But even she seemed to know her threats rang hollow. Guests who remained ignored her completely, their backs turned as though she were invisible. And for the first time in my life, I was the one standing in the light. The morning after the party, Raleigh buzzed with whispers. Business papers ran headlines like "Stone and Associates pulls out after Gregory Hale family scandal." Local blogs speculated about betrayal, fraud, and whether the Hale empire was crumbling. I sat at Ellen's kitchen table with a mug of coffee going cold in my hands, scrolling through the news on my phone. Every headline was another reminder Karen and Shannon hadn't just lost face. They detonated my father's reputation. My phone vibrated. Dad flashed on the screen. For a moment I just stared, frozen. He hadn't called me in years. I answered. Silence. Then a voice I barely recognized hollow, stripped of its usual authority. "Abby, we need to talk." We met that afternoon in his office downtown, the walls lined with framed photos of buildings he'd developed. But what caught me was the family portrait on his desk: Karen, Shannon, and him, all smiling. No trace of me. He looked older than he had last night, the weight of betrayal etched into his face. "I didn't see it," he admitted, voice rough. "I trusted them completely." I sat across from him, my posture straight, but my heart racing. "You didn't want to see it," They made me invisible, and you let them. His gaze dropped, shame flickering in his eyes. For the first time, I saw my father not as a titan of real estate, but as a man cornered by his own blindness. I can't undo what's been done, he said slowly, but I can make things right. In the weeks that followed, things unraveled quickly for Karen and Shannon. My father filed to freeze the transfer of shares, citing fraud and undue influence. The draft agreement and recordings Ellen and I uncovered became evidence in court. Karen's carefully curated network began to abandon her, and Shannon's social media, once a glossy highlight reel, filled with angry comments about greed and betrayal. But the real turning point came during a closed-door meeting with my father's legal team. He slid a thick envelope across the table toward me. "These are documents placing you as a legal beneficiary and shareholder," he said. "You've earned your place, Abby." I should have seen that long ago. I stared at the papers, my throat tight. "Why now?" I asked quietly. His answer was simple, almost broken. "Because you're the only one who didn't betray me." Karen and Shannon tried to fight. Of course, Karen claimed she was manipulated. Shannon wept in court, insisting it was all Kyle's idea. But the evidence was too clear, too damning. The judge's ruling cut through their lies. The attempted transfer was void, and an inquiry into potential fraud was opened. For once, the spotlight wasn't on them, it was on me. The invisible child, suddenly undeniable. Ellen sat beside me at the final hearing, her hand squeezing mine. "You did this," she whispered. And for the first time, I believed her. The months ahead weren't simple. My father and I didn't magically become close. There were still years of distance and silence between us. But we began, slowly, to rebuild. He attended the premiere of my latest documentary, sitting in the back row, clapping quietly when the credits rolled. It wasn't much, but it was something. As for Karen and Shannon, their glittering world shrank fast. Karen moved out of the Hale estate after the divorce was finalized. Shannon, stripped of the golden aura she'd worn all her life, drifted into obscurity. And me, I kept filming. My next project was Personal Invisible No More, a story about children like me who had been overlooked, silenced, erased. This time, I had funding. This time, doors opened instead of slamming shut. Because I wasn't invisible anymore. As I stepped out of the courthouse that day, I lifted my head high and drew in a deep breath. The Raleigh sky was clear, sunlight spilling across the worn stone steps. In my bag, I carried not only legal documents and rulings, but something far more important. The truth had finally been seen. Karen and Shannon would no doubt flail, desperate to cling to the fading shimmer of their old world, but I no longer cared. They no longer had the power to define who I was, or to erase me. Beside me, Ellen smiled and squeezed my hand. "You did it, Abby," she whispered. I nodded, a quiet certainty settling in my chest. For the first time in years, my heart felt light-free. And in that moment, I understood my life had never been about my father's approval, nor about surviving their contempt. It began here, now with me. I was invisible no longer.